The reading for today is from Living Deeply, The Art and Science of Transformation in Everyday Life, edited by Marilyn Schlitz, Cassandra Vienton, and Tina Amarak. We need only look to the extraordinary changes of the last few decades in the areas of civil rights, social and ecological justice, medical and psychological advancements, health and healing, and peace and reconciliation to see that we're learning more every day about how to positively transform our personal and collective consciousness. And we need only glance at the morning news or the front page of the paper to see how far we still have to go. Our firm belief is that most of the unnecessary suffering on this planet, as well as much of our environmental decline and the rapid rate of species extinction, finds its root cause in the limited consciousness of a strictly materialistic culture that accepts the objective world outside ourselves as the only useful reality. Indeed, the greatest achievements of our species' relatively short time on Earth have taken place as a result of quantum leaps in consciousness. Great shifts that started with one or a few individuals changing their perspective and doing things differently. Learning how people can change their consciousness to become more balanced, compassionate, altruistic, tolerant of difference, able to hold complexity, and motivated to promote peace and sustainability is one of the most fundamental tasks before us. If you look at human history, you can find many examples of major and rapid changes in the way we collectively hold reality. Epidemics of ideas can spread. Collective worldwide views can shift in a moment as a critical mass of people begin to share a similar way of thinking. Perhaps it's time for an epidemic of consciousness transformation. Each of us can be a catalyst for this positive epidemic. It's time for us to make use of all of our intelligences, including the intellectual, social, emotional, intuitive, spiritual, and ecological dimensions, to wake up to who we are and what we are capable of being.
Hi, those of you that just arrived. So glad you could join us. Our theme for the month, as Dr. Mike said, the month of February has been Awakening to Our Spiritual Magnificence. And my talk title today is Awakening to Your Spiritual Magnificence. Now, there's something about the thing that happens when the talk title is exactly the same as the theme. There's this little giggling that goes on. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it seems like it's funny for everyone that they're the same. But what I want you to know today is that while they're the same, the tagline, if you will, or the principle, or the what we believe statement that is behind the talk title actually takes the talk in a little slightly different direction. The underlying statement from the global vision is we envision humanity's awakening to its spiritual magnificence. Humanity's awakening. It's a contextual shift from I to us, or from me to we. Now, Ernest Holmes says, when we awaken to our spiritual magnificence, we wake up to the truth of who and whose we are. It begins with one of us. And in the context of our divine connection with each other, spreads and grows. As we wake up, we nudge others awake. One individualized expression at a time, we become consciously aware of our divine nature, and as it is realized, it is manifested. So in this quote, we can see the importance of our awakening to our spiritual magnificence. We can see the importance of our becoming aware of our divine nature. We can see the importance of one individualized expression at a time. That when we recognize our own spiritual magnificence, that we become a mirror for that recognition in others. And as they begin to recognize their spiritual magnificence, they in turn nudge others to awaken, but it has to begin within us, one person at a time. Now, over the month of February, we have been exploring this idea of our spiritual magnificence. We talked about it as the spiritual truth of the highest God and the innermost God is one God. That we were, each of us, created out of this one God, by this one God, and that there is a spark of it, a hologram of it within each and every single one of us in its fullness, in its wholeness. We talked about this one God as light through a prism that disperses into seemingly separate colors, each with their own esoteric meaning, each with their own unique expression, each color and individualized manifestation of the one light, and yet united in their connection to the whole. We talked about this one God as our own unique expression, that we too appear as individualized expressions of God, and yet we too are united in our connection to the whole. We talked about this unique expression as our own voice, that which we are here to uniquely share with each other. Ernest Holmes says that we have the stamp of individuality put upon us. And what this means is that there is a perfect form of self-expression for each and every single one of us, something that we are to do or to be that no one else can do or be, a place that we are to fill that no one else can fill. Do you hear what I'm saying? So every incarnation, every individualized expression is needed to express the infinite universal reality. Every manifestation of the divine is unique and precious and vital and necessary for the whole of life to be expressed. This is truly living in and through and as our spiritual magnificence. The importance of each of us individually awakening to this truth was clearly described by Ernest Holmes in the quote when he said that it begins with one of us. That it begins with one of us, and as we wake, that we nudge others to awaken. Now, in her book, Journey to the Center of the Soul, Yvette Gardner says that this awakening is a process. It's a 3-phase process that begins with spiritual awareness, moves through spiritual enlightenment, and finally lands on spiritual awakening. Now, she says these 3 concepts of spiritual study might more understandingly be thought of as 3 distinct phases of a single process known as spiritual evolution. Every phase within spiritual evolution, within the spiritual evolution process, seamlessly flows into and feeds the next phase, so that there is really no genuine distinction between them. It's all one process which continually repeats itself again and again. One journey ends and a new journey instantly begins. And along each rite of passage, you move through the stages of spiritual awareness, spiritual enlightenment, and spiritual awakening. So it would serve us well for us to remember that this is a journey. and not really a destination as we typically think about a destination as a geographical location that once we arrive there, there we are. No, it's a process. It's a journey, and it's really about the journey itself and not the destination. So considering its importance not only to Ernest Holmes, but also to Yvette Gardner, I mean, of course we're going to listen to them, so I thought that we would take a minute or two to look at this process as she describes it. So the first phase is spiritual awareness. Now, to be aware simply means to be cognizant of, to recognize. So spiritual awareness is simply about becoming mindful about spiritual truth. It doesn't take any effort to grow in spiritual awareness. It just requires your awareness. That's all. It just requires your awareness. You can't compel yourself to become more spiritually aware. You just have to take a look at that which is already within you and become aware of it. You become more spiritually aware by accepting spiritual truth, and then your acceptance in turn informs your awareness. So your acceptance is what actually causes you to be aware, and your doubt causes you to be unaware. So for example, if I were to accept the spiritual truth that love is all that there is, then my awareness will be filled with the presence of love. You cannot perceive what you do not believe. It's a spiritual truth. You cannot perceive what you do not believe. So that saying of, I'll believe it when I see it should really be, I'll see it when I believe it. It's a spiritual truth. Your experience of life is a reflection of your beliefs. It is an expression in form of those truths that you have chosen to accept as true. Those ideas that you choose to be accepted as truth, then fuel and create the experience of your life, yes? So each of us experiences a different reality. That's a reality with a little small r, because each of us has different beliefs. Each of us has different truths with a small t that we have accepted to be our truth. Now, some, maybe most, maybe all, of those truths with a small t that we've accepted to be true are not really true. But more often than not, something that we have acquired through our upbringing or through our connection to race consciousness or through the stories that we've told ourselves about the experiences of our lives. Now, we call these truths with a small t our personal truths. Our personal truths, and they're much different than spiritual truth. Personal truths cannot be true with a capital T because they're not true for everyone. Spiritual truths, on the other hand, hold true for everyone. They are always true. And they always evoke good feelings. And they're capable of standing alone, unadorned by justification or unadorned by some underlying desire. So it's probably easy to recognize that I am not worthy is a personal truth, right? Whereas I am worthy is a spiritual truth. But can you hear the difference in I am worthy as a spiritual truth and I am worthy because I always do everything to perfection as a personal truth? Can you hear the difference in that? A spiritual truth simply is. It just simply is, and it doesn't need to rely on reason to substantiate it. It just simply is. Growing in spiritual awareness means standing in the awareness of who you are as a spiritual being. The recognition of yourself as spirit, and knowing that personal truths are not synonymous with spiritual truths. Now, the second phase, spiritual enlightenment, the enlighten means to inform, to give the light of truth to. So having spiritual enlightenment implies that your awareness of spiritual truths actually informs your believing, informs your outlook, informs your experience of life. Spiritual enlightenment actually happens when you accept these spiritual truths as your truth. It's the difference between being simply aware and actually embodying the truths. Can you hear the difference in that? Now think about it. Isn't it entirely possible to be aware of something and still not allow that awareness to illuminate or factor into your thinking? Or into the way that you perceive your life? Isn't it entirely possible that you could choose to distort or to disregard or to minimize any awareness that you might have? Enlightenment, therefore, involves an allowing. It involves a surrender to spiritual truths and letting go of anything unlike those spiritual truths, letting go of those personal truths that you have held to be true for yourself for so long, and stepping into the spiritual truth in a really powerful way. Now, the third phase, spiritual awakening, to awaken means to arouse or to become active. Like that. That's active. Spiritual awakening, Yvette Gardner says, spiritual awakening involves allowing spirit to actually act through you with lesser and lesser degrees of resistance. Sounds good, huh? Spiritual awakening denotes a growth in your active awareness of spiritual truths. Simple spiritual awareness can be passive. It may simply bear witness. Spiritual awakening requires that you actually put your spiritual understandings into life action. Spiritual awakening is the application part of the spiritual evolution process. It is the leg of the journey which actually promotes the expansion of consciousness so that your awareness grows to greater and greater depths of understanding. Spiritual awakening. Now, each opportunity to move through this entire process of spiritual evolution is an opportunity to awaken to your spiritual magnificence. One time it might be about the spiritual truth of love. And the next time maybe it's about the spiritual truth of peace or of patience or of abundance. But each time you become aware of the spiritual truth and allow it to inform your beliefs, your outlook, and your experience of life, you deepen your embodiment of that spiritual truth and your ability to actually be that truth, to be that spiritual truth in your life, no matter what circumstance or situation you might find yourself in. You can stay in it. You can stand in it. When it's more than just being aware of it, when you have moved through enlightenment, accepted the truth, and now are standing in it in action. In spiritual awakening, you touch lives. And you begin simply by your mere presence to begin to nudge others to awaken. We are all so interconnected. that any time we change, everything changes to some degree or another. What we do and who we are carries so much influence that you might not even be aware of. You can't ever know what one moment of kindness, one moment of recognition, one moment of acceptance can do for another person. That one moment could be the 100th monkey. It could be the tipping point for our vision. But if it's not that, at the very least, it will be a moment that brings us closer to it, yes? So take a look at this video.
This is Mr. Brown. He's the most remarkable man you've probably never heard of. He's changed the lives of millions of people, including mine. So today, we changed his. But before you know the end of the story, let's start from the beginning. When he was a little boy, he loved to read.
I read everything I could get my hands on. Newspapers and magazines from the garbage. We were poor. We didn't have money to buy all these books.
But there was one book in particular that changed his life.
My grandmother one day walked in and she said, "I want you to read this book, Bobby." It was called It's Up to You. I probably read it 10 times, over the years, and it inspired me.
It put him on the path to helping people, from small-town cop to the FBI, and from civil rights leader all the way up to the White House. Mr. Brown has worked with people around the world fighting for what's right. His mission brought him to South Africa, where he discovered that thousands of books were banned during apartheid. It broke his heart.
I was appalled by that. Books and education mean everything, not just for the individual, but for our society. I started Booksmart, and then we started expanding the book project to schools across South Africa. The need is unbelievably great, but the resources are not there to keep it moving.
Hundreds of donated books turned into millions. And while he'd never asked for it, Mr. Brown needs help.
My wish for all these books is that we would be able to get to millions of young people who do not have a chance. We're giving them a chance at life. My God, what on earth? Oh my God. We can put a couple million more books in here. This is a complete makeover. I mean, I could never dream this could happen.
My name is Mpumi Nobiva. I am one of the many children Mr. Brown has helped.
Oh, girl.
I have something very special for you.
Oh, my goodness. Where'd you find this? This is it. This is the book. Dearest Mr. Brown, we wanted to grant your wish to continue sharing the power of books with the children of Africa. On behalf of all of them and all of your friends at UPS, thank you. All that's going to count in the end, as my grandmother said, is how much good did you do. If you want to do something with your life, it's all up to you.
This was one man. One man who became aware of the spiritual truth. One man who became aware of who and whose he was. One man who saw all of humanity as that same whole, perfect, and complete expression of the divine. That no one is inherently better or worse than anyone. One man who became aware of that which was seeking to be expressed through and as him, and was willing to say yes to that calling, even though he had absolutely no idea how he was going to do it. One man who, while not specifically asking for help, was supported by the universe in ways that he could never have even imagined, in ways that clearly touched him deeply. One man, through who he was and how he walked his walk, how he walked his talk, nudged others into their spiritual magnificence and moved our world a few steps closer to the vision of a world that works for everyone. Now, last week I was in Salt Lake City, as I already said, at the Centers for Spiritual Living annual conference. And during our business meeting, we talked at length about our 2016 Global Vision theme and about the commitment of so many of our centers to bring this vision powerfully forward into the world. At one point, there was a question and answer minute, and one of the ministers stood up and asked, how would we know if a world that works for everyone had actually been realized? How would we know that what we envision had become a reality? Now, some of you might be sitting here today with that same question on your mind, or perhaps some of you are sitting here with an underlying belief that it cannot happen. Or how could I make any difference in it? Present during this question and answer period were a number of people from the Centers for Spiritual Living Leadership Council and staff. And the answers that I particularly loved and I'm going to share with you today came from our spiritual director, spiritual leader, Reverend Dr. Ken Gordon, and from the chair of the Leadership Council, Reverend Dr. David Alexander. Now, what they both said in a nutshell was that a vision, like our vision, a world that works for everyone, is different than a goal. Because goals come with measurable objectives. Objectives that can be analyzed and assessed. A vision does not. A vision is something that you lay out in front of you for you to step into or to live from. It is the context from which you create the experiences of your life. It is the context from which you interact with others and with your environment. It is not a destination, but the light that we are moving towards, the light that we are growing toward. It is the journey itself and not a place to end up. A vision lives as a possibility on the spiritual side of life, not as a problem to be solved on the human side of life. And in our awareness of the spiritual truth of unlimited possibility, we don't need to know how it's going to happen. We don't need to know how it's going to unfold. We simply need to stand in our awareness of the spiritual truth of possibility and to let go of any personal truths that we have that might be getting in the way of that becoming a reality. Then we have to accept these truths without distortion and then begin to act from that spiritual understanding in the world, in all of our experiences and in all of our relationships. The quote that Babs read at the beginning of the service says, each of us can be a catalyst for positive epidemic. Whole new way of looking at that word, epidemic, yes? Each of us can be a catalyst for this possible epidemic. It is time for us to wake up to who we are and what we are capable of becoming. So if you are so moved, please repeat after me. I am open to deepening my awareness of spiritual truth. I am open to deepening my awareness of spiritual truth. With feeling. I allow that awareness to inform what I say, what I do, and who I am being in the world. I allow that awareness to inform what I say, what I do, and who I am being in the world. I let go of anything unlike spiritual truth and step powerfully into my spiritual magnificence. I let go of anything unlike spiritual truth and step powerfully into my spiritual magnificence. I know that as I do so, I nudge others into awakening into their spiritual magnificence. I know that as I do so, I nudge others into awakening to their spiritual magnificence. Can you feel that? Can you know that? Say yes. Yes. And so it is. And so it is. Thank you. So I invite you to turn within for a moment. Knowing that as I turn within, I am acutely aware of the presence within me of God. It is palpable. I feel it, I know it, I proclaim it. It is eternal. It is everywhere at all times. It is benevolent. It is loving. It is an energy with no circumference and points of center everywhere. I know that I am one of those points of center. That it is that which created me out of itself. That which placed within me a spark of itself. Knowing that what it is, I am. And just as I know this to be true for me, I know it is so for each and every person in this room, that each of us is a unique and divine expression of the divine. And it is from that place of unity, this connection to each other that can never be broken, I speak these words about and for each of us today. Knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that each of us is a spiritual being. That each of us is connected to this one God in ways that cannot be broken. And through that connection, that golden thread of God's stuff, we are connected to each other in amazing and really wonderful ways. I know that each of us, through this connection with this one God, has a voice, a unique one thing that we are here to do and to be and to express and to share with the world. That each of us has a Mr. Brown within us, that we can express in our own way, not Mr. Brown's way, but our own way. And that it is needed and necessary and vital to the whole. That it can be big and broad, or it could be a simple act of kindness, a simple act of recognition, a simple act of acceptance, an opportunity to awaken to our spiritual magnificence in a way that reflects back to everyone we meet their own spiritual magnificence in a way that nudges them to awaken to it. And what I claim for us today is that we can do this with ease and with grace. That we were born to do it. that we were born to be this presence on the planet, touching lives, creating change, and co-creating a world that works for everyone. And I'm so grateful to know this truth, so grateful to speak these words, so grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into that law that only ever says yes, that the words are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them, and I release them with love and gratitude and full expectation of their manifestation. And I invite everyone here and everyone at home to anchor them for themselves and for each other by saying, "And so it is. Amen."